that they were influenced to start it. So that's pretty much randomly put out. A third of all micro and small enterprises said they were influenced by somebody else who had been doing a successful activity and had shown their wares publicly. Now we're seeing that abroad as well. So everybody's familiar, I think, or most people here. 20 years ago, Japan started the Lion's Den. It was followed 15 years ago by United Kingdom, which is the same thing. Shark Tank did the same thing in the United States 10 years ago. You're seeing this now in 5, 6 countries in Africa. Why is that? Because they saw in each of those markets there was entrepreneurial frenzy that followed people watching these incubated companies or small companies coming up. What were their challenges? How were they solving them? How were they rejected? I think television loves blood, so sometimes they enjoy that as well. So to that extent, this is why entrepreneurship is important. When you talk to some of these, or will listen to some of these companies today, they're going to have entrepreneurs that come out getting a lot of media attention, getting a lot of funding, and maybe the multiplier effect on that is 10,000 companies, 5,000 companies. We don't know, but what we do know is it does create a frenzy. We've seen it in Africa, we've seen it across the world. Now, today's theme broadly is youth, or at least this morning's theme. And a thank you to the people in the previous panel, because I think they really set the stage in saying it's not just about technical skills. It's the holistic skills. It's the soft skills that you need to bring in. And I think that's something you will hear today from some of our panelists and what they deal with as young people in the ICT space. Sometimes you think it's all technical, not so much. What's very important, what a lot of studies are telling us, is those soft skills matter both in jobs and entrepreneurship. So with that having been said, very excited to have, and let me introduce each of our panelists one at a time. Dr. Eleni Gebremaden from Blue Moon. Hamid. I'll give you a 30-second warning as that time comes up a little bit, because I know everybody's looking forward to lunch a bit, so please be succinct. Talk about the modality of your program, of your activities that your organization has. Talk about kind of the maturity. How long do you hold these kids in your cohorts, or even after they leave your cohorts? How do you access to finance, things like that, and what are the overall benefits if you're one of the entrepreneurs out there who you're looking at to kind of bring your company into as an incubator. So let me start with Sarah, and we can go around.
Thank you very much. I will talk about Technovision a little bit. So our mission is actually to inspire and also, empower young women to become tech entrepreneurs. And then we've been working, we started last year. We've been working with around 60 girls last year. And then this year we've been working with close to 100 girls. So this is a program, it's a global competition, but then it has a whole lot of interesting programs under it. So this is actually targeting girls from age 10 to 18 to learn necessary skills so that they can be entrepreneurs and also they can pursue in technology fields. So what we do is, or mostly our program model is, it has 4 parts. The first one is there is a bit that we say ideation. So they'll be learning about different issues, and then they'll be exploring different problems. So they'll be, they'll be identifying a problem that they want to solve. And then after that, the technology component comes in, so that they will be working for a problem, then they will be identifying a code that will solve that problem. So they'll be doing that. And right after that, it wouldn't stop there. And then there will be a state-of-the-art curriculum, which is developed. And then they'll be doing some skills training, particularly on business development. So they'll be working on their business plans, on how they will take their application, to the market. And then the fourth bit is actually working around their confidence, how they would actually present their projects and also their plans to the market. So there is a pitch component where they'll be learning all this, and then they'll be working, taking their innovations, taking their technologies to the market. So through this is actually intended and developed to help them develop their 21st century key skills like, negotiations, problem solving, adaptability, flexibility, agility, and resilience, and a lot of things. And we've really witnessed, these girls, when they're actually provided with opportunities to explore and to learn and, to be free to explore some things, they can actually bring in amazing mobile solutions to a number of problems that our society faces. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So a little bit of ICE at this. For some of you who don't know about ICE at this, like ICE stands for Innovation, Collaboration, Entrepreneurship. I would say probably it's probably the oldest tech space in Addis. Established in 2011 in May, so we actually now 7 years. So in the last 7 years, we've seen a lot of change in the ecosystem, and we also see a lot of progress, and some of the old problem also still exists. So hopefully we're going to talk about that in this panel. Yeah. So back in 2011, when there is the internet is 0.4%, and people have they created the first Yahoo email. And MySpace, which none of the videos were loading, and the big UN organizations and the Addis Ababa University have relatively better internet, but none of the people or the population never intended to have that kind of connection. Of course, it sounds crazy to start a startup support program or even have a tech company. Without actually having proper that kind of infrastructure. I think I see a lot of progress in the last years where internet penetration has been increased, even though the quality is still compromised. Everybody knows that, and mobile penetration is now 60% reached, creating a lot of potentials for tech startups to progress on that. So I said this we've been first located in Addis Ababa University in EIABC College. I think the logo still exists there in the fancy containers. So the whole idea at that time was how do we convert final year projects, what the students have, and try to actually make that into a viable business. So that was the first question. But then we know that without having a real and working tech community in Ethiopia, that doesn't happen. So to establish that, we need to have this multi-partnership approach. So we need to work with private sector, with ministries, and to engage kind of tech communities, particularly a certain group of people. So to give you an example, for instance, bloggers. We're doing a bit of research in 2010. There are only 20 Ethiopian bloggers blog in English from Ethiopia. So as you can imagine, more than 80% of the information about Ethiopia coming from either outside people, Ethiopian diaspora people, especially living in North America, or foreigners who are living in Ethiopia, or journalists and stuff like that. So there is no community-based, really grassroots level information coming out of Ethiopia. So basically ISADIS was kind of a place where these people come together and talk about their challenges. They take the lead and try to actually create the space for themselves, basically. And that number obviously grows. We have relatively like now a vibrant blogosphere, right? So most of the public discussions, as you can imagine, the last years, happening online on social media and stuff like that. So people found alternative media for that. So the same thing is like for others, like for instance, developers. Android developers, I remember we have talked with Google that to establish Android developers. So we have leaders who are actually really good at developing for Android and then establishing communities around that. And they meet up and discuss about that. So having that tech community aspect, building the ground level is actually extremely important in our work. And I will talk about like some of the activities related with incubation and some of the startups later on. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Eleni Gabrametin, and I am the founder of Blue Moon, which is Ethiopia's first youth agribusiness and agri-tech incubator and seed investor. So we started about 1.5 years ago, operations. It's a private company, was launched at the end of 2016. After about 1 year of looking at different models and trying to figure out what we could do here that would be value adding, because we know that there were others that came before us and that were doing great things. And so what we wanted to do is really find a niche that would be very valuable and impactful and have a model that we thought we could really evolve here in the Ethiopian space. So what we have at Blue Moon is a 4-month incubator program running twice a year. We target 15 to 29-year-olds. And the idea is that it's an on-site, full-time program, and it's a very holistic model in terms of the program offerings. So we do national recruitment. We work with NGOs, universities, TVETs, the FEMSEDA to really cast the net as wide as possible. We're currently at about 5% acceptance rate, which makes us just about as difficult to get into as Harvard. And the idea is to get to 0.5%, which would make us one of the most selective programs in the world for anything. So we really are seeking exceptional young people with brilliant ideas that are big, crazy, innovative, scalable, and potentially transformational in the area of agribusiness, which is very, very broadly defined. We look at pre-cultivation, post-cultivation, cultivation itself, that's for cropping. We look at livestock, dairy, honey, fisheries, agroforestry, waste into agriculture, waste out of agriculture. So even clean tech, and also now increasingly we're also moving into nutrition, linking to food. So really very, very broad. So agribusiness is just a place to start. It's not where we're going to end. So in the 4-month program, we start with coaching, in fact training on skills, and then coaching on one-to-one with the entrepreneurs that we're incubating. And then we link them to mentors who are outside of our program, so business professionals in the community, and then we link them to or give them access to Lions, which are high net worth agribusiness and other business executive CEO level in the country. And then we provide a program called Biz for You, which is business services, meaning legal services, accounting, HR, etc., marketing, web design, all of those things. And then finally, we inject seed investment on an equity basis into the companies, because we feel that one of the biggest gaps, in addition to access to skills and access to networks, is access to seed investment. Not microfinance, because these are not low-risk traditional types of businesses. These are high-risk, investable businesses that require a long-term mindset for investment. So to really create an angel investing kind of mentality and that ecosystem here in Ethiopia, we are the first seed investor, and then we want to be followed by others who would come after us, in other words, the Lions. So we have also established our own Lions Den, which is that it's a little de-risked for the Lions because we don't have that culture of angel investing. So basically the Lions who have been seeing the entrepreneurs in the program every month on a Lion meet, kind of a monthly meeting, at the end of the program would be invited to join Lions Den if they're interested in hearing a pitch and making a decision on TV live, whether they're going to invest or not. So we've run one Lions Den. It was extremely successful. Our companies, each of which came in with a $100,000 valuation because we put in $10,000 on a 10% basis. Came out with, in one case, 4 times that with the business that they presented to the investors, to the Lions. Another one, 2.5, 2.7. So overall, our portfolio went up 2.5x. So we thought that's a pretty good sign that we're onto something. One of our entrepreneurs is right here, Christian Tesfaye, was 19 at the time, turned 20 during our incubation. Went on to win Slush, the Global Impact Accelerator. You can stand up and wave. We're very proud of him. And he just came back from Berlin where he met the CEO of Bayer Corporation and a lot of investors with a marketing tech company linking farmers to market. So that's kind of more or less our program. But we've also seen over these 18 months, that's my timer, so I'll continue later. You didn't even stop me. Should I continue? Okay, thank you. So what we saw over the last 18 months since we started the program, or our incubator, and we're actually on our 3rd batch, so we've now incubated 30 companies, and the idea is to incubate and seed invest in 300 companies in 5 years. So it's a very aggressive scaling strategy that we have for ourselves. And the idea is out of those 300, who knows which ones will emerge as the big winners, and we hope it's you, Christian, but there are a few others also in the room, so I don't want to just focus on one. Anyway, so what we realize in terms of gaps is, first of all, that access to land is still a major problem. Not so much for tech companies, but for the other types of companies that we're incubating. So we're now launching Blue Moon Park, which is the idea that we would actually have an industrial park for our incubated companies because they can't find land, in the current industrial parks or anywhere else. So that's an issue that we're trying to solve. The second is that after us and after the Lions, we still need institutional capital, and there is really very little else to find. So we're now setting up Blue Moon Seed Fund, a $10 million fund, which we're starting to do the groundwork to lay. Then the third piece is what you've all heard about in the last few days, which is the establishment of Blue Moon Lab. And if I have a chance, I'll talk to you more about that. And so, yeah, I'll stop there.
Excellent. Thank you, Lane. Amadou, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Amadou Gebeya. Essentially, we're a center of excellence for software engineers, or IT talent. What we do, we're trying to solve the fundamental problem of specialized talent. So you have talent, but you also have specialized talent. Whereby if you have a company and you're looking for very special skills from someone, that person needs to be ready to work day one, productive day one. For every ecosystem, there's really 3 things that revolve around that ecosystem. One is talent, the other one is cash investment, and the other one is entrepreneurs. So what we decided to do initially when we came to Ethiopia was to start from the talent side. Grow the talent with the skills that allow them to become great CEO potentially, or great actually workers for the CEO who want to hire them. A very good example of that is David Abraham, the founder of Kukulu. Pretty sure some of you see the booth out there. Created an amazing game, first of his kind in East Africa, which actually has a business model where he actually made money day one. It also has a lot of traction, and the quality of the game is global. So David came to visit us when we first started the program. All he wanted to be was a great mobile application developer. And we asked him, well, at Gebeya, when you come, you have to work on a project. The project is a signature, is what makes you you. And he said, well, I have a game. So he showed us a game. It was very primitive at the time because he had very low skills around it. The team he had was very primitive again, and then we helped him. So throughout the training, which is 6 months, he was able to develop his skills, was able to find the right talent within the team he was working with, and eventually we invested in him. So what we are really is an ecosystem that trains, hire, and incubate African entrepreneurs, and Ethiopia is our flagship.
Jim Bagnola. Do a couple of things that I want to talk about bringing to Ethiopia. So one is partnering with Shola and bringing a graduate program here that we've been doing in the United States through Maharishi University of Management. In the past several years, we've had 700 graduates, Ethiopian graduates. and they go to school for 8 months, master's in computer science. After the 8 months, they get 2 years of internship at an average of $80,000 a year. They only have to pay $30,000 back to the university, which they get almost up front from a special program that we do. That money is a seed money for either them getting a job and having some money in the bank, or a seed money to start their own business. We're bringing it to Ethiopia because the U.S. companies snap them up and they stay. We want them to stay here. So we are bringing the university here and having the same type of program, and maybe even get commitment from companies here. If they want to commit to a company here, then that person goes to the U.S. for a 2-year stint and then comes back with money in their pocket. The second thing we want to bring is entrepreneurial boot camps, which are like a Shark Tank, but they're educational. We have coaches from international coaches come in. We have local coaches come in, and they coach individuals all the way up to competition. And then after competition, we stick with them for 6 months of coaching. And all of it is, we donate our time to that. And that's the third part, is individual coaching. He should have got a bigger hand, because starting a business is daunting. It's tough. 80% of them fail in the first year. That's why they have the 3 Fs. I either got money from the family, friends, or fools, because it's tough. So they need help. They need to be paired up with somebody who already did this. In the U.S., most jobs come from small business, and these are entrepreneurs who now create jobs for other people. So you need 1.3 million a year, that I found out this morning. 1.3 million, and some of those have to be startups. And millennials and the next generation, the Zs, are brilliant. They're brilliant. I work in Romania. I have a company with 20 millennials, and full-time, and 20 part-time, all either entrepreneur or intrapreneurs. 71% of all millennials and Z generation want to be entrepreneurs, but they need help. And so it's a giving back. Anybody who's done it should give back and help others to do it. That's the way we build the country. So those are the 3 things, and generally speaking, I have a theme. It's called fuzzies and techies. We need both of them to make this thing work. These are terms used at Stanford University, and we combine them in our education.
Hear me? Oh, good, yeah. So let me ask all the panelists 2 quick questions, and maybe we'll start with Jim and go back this way, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. So we've talked a lot about the entrepreneurs. I mean, the programs are what they are, and thank you for explaining the structure of them. So the 2 questions would be, number 1, what are the biggest challenges that you find that entrepreneurs have as they grow? As you said, 8 out of 10 of them end up failing. So what are the kind of things that become overwhelming and they can't get really their head around? Number 1. Number 2, what are the kind of supports that are put in place to address these specific challenges?
For me, I'll just think about, I'm coaching someone from a boot camp in Sri Lanka, Jaffna, Sri Lanka. And my first question was, what is your most important task right now? And he said, getting that money for the app. Getting the money for the app. His idea was to, as tourists came into Sri Lanka, he had an app ready for them to go into a private home and have a meal, a Sri Lankan meal. Great idea. And I said to him, you want to raise money? Yeah. So tell me, how many people have you got who will open their homes and cook? None. You have no product. How can you want to raise money for an app? By the way, how many tourists come every year to Sri Lanka? I don't know. And another question. What percentage of those people will want to come to somebody's home? And what's the price of a meal if you go out to eat? And what's the price of in the home? Okay. So where you started was, is this a viable business? Let's think it through with you first to decide before you go off looking for money from some fool or a friend or a family member. Because no venture capitalist is going to give you any money. So the initial thing is, okay, let's get all those good ideas on the table and then find out if they're viable first.
That very same question, I think you brought up a very important point. So if you can piggyback his question or point to it, which is, what is really very, very important? Is it the product development side? Is it the go-to-market side? Which is the real big challenge? Because it's a push and pull sometimes, right? So if you could answer that as well as the broader challenges.
Okay, I'm going to make it contextual to Ethiopia. Because if I look at it from America perspective, it's totally different. Like you mentioned Sri Lanka, right? So let's pick David again, right? So David came, created a great game, and one is the product. The product was not to the standard we wanted it. I can't market a product that's not good, right? And he was limiting himself into only Ethiopia. This would be the greatest game coming out of Ethiopia. I said, man, what about the rest of Africa, right? So they're not informed enough that their product can actually transcend what Ethiopia is. Okay, so then he ran into a problem of team, okay? We have a problem in Ethiopia, but good people actually can give you the skills that you want. I mean, the former panel talked about that. So now we have to figure out what kind of team do you need. For example, building a game, somebody may say, okay, I'm going to build a game, but it requires very specific skills. You need graphic artists. You need animators. Those are not even coders. You need marketers. As a matter of fact, if you want to market a game, you have to spend $1 for every download. So if you want 1 million downloads, you have to spend $1 million. So there's a lot of information he was missing that me and my co-founder were able to feed him. The last part was the cash. Okay, now we got the great game, everything. Now, okay, where do we get the money? So in Ethiopia, the money that these startups are asking for is not a lot. Generally, it's under $100,000. You have two choices. Either you have angel investors, and we don't have that network, and I hope that Dr. Eleni would work very hard on that, which allow them to actually invest locally to local companies. But because we're foreigners, and Kebeya is actually a foreigner coming in, and then later registered as a local company, the minimum we had to bring was $150,000, right? For a young person who wanted $50,000, right? So that investment thing couldn't come in easier. And what we had to do was figure out how do we create this company somewhere else, right? You keep a company local here, but you have to create a company in Kenya, right? That would allow you to actually invest into the company. So those are the three things, between the quality of the product, the team, and the cash.
Dr. Lee, if you could expand on those questions, please.
Yeah, so, well, first thing is I think what Jim was saying about all those questions, I was thinking, wow, that sounds like a Blue Moon deep dive. That's what we call those kind of sessions where, you know, it takes about 3 hours and you're blown away because all of a sudden you start to tear apart that idea that sounded really great when you're applying online to the incubator. So we do a lot of that, but I want to take a step back and talk about mindset and attitudes, because we spend also a lot of time building up the entrepreneur himself or herself. And because it's culture bound, I think one of the challenges that we've seen is the culture of secrecy And, and we, by the way, I want to say we're having a Disrupt Ag challenge going on right now at our booth, which is that you can win a ticket to Mombasa in 2 nights if you give us a disruptive idea on how to disrupt agriculture. And so we've had people at our booth saying, if I write down my idea, what if you guys steal my idea? I'm going to write down my $1 billion idea and give it to you on this little piece of paper, and maybe you're just trying to get my ideas and steal them. So there's this kind of attitude that even in the incubator over 4 months, where the whole idea is that a cohort of 15 companies, teams of 2 to 3 on each company, get to know each other really well, get to know us really well, and we're going to be interacting on their idea and really working hard on it and investing hours, hundreds of hours on each company, and yet people want to hold back how they're going to build that biopesticide or make that biopesticide or whatever. So I think that culture of secrecy leads us to a lot of a lack of openness and a lack of openness to learning. The other is, of course, as we all know, the lack of confidence and being able to tell one story and really infuse passion into a story. So we have exercises like, it's called rejection therapy, where we make people go around and get rejected around town. We have something called soapboxing, where we literally give them crates, soda, soft drink crates, and they go stand on the corner in Boli and literally do preaching to the masses of whatever they want to talk about. We have them, we do the hustle challenge. So there's a lot of things that we do that have nothing to do strictly with their business, but that have everything to do with developing that attitude of, grit and determination and passion and telling your story with that, power of conviction. So those are some of the things that we work on with the entrepreneur. I think somebody mentioned about teams. I think it was Amadou. We've seen quite a lot of teams fall apart in those 4 months because the going gets tough, and what we see is that emotional intelligence is so critical. So we've now started a track on emotional intelligence, emotional capital, how do you build it, team skills, etc. And then now coming to the product and the technology and the prototype itself. We follow a track which, in terms of the coaching that we do, we start with design thinking, and from there to business model canvas, prototyping, and then prototyping, and then customer testing, and then supplier commitment. So really building the entire business kind of from A to Z. And so we've seen a lot of pivoting that happens, and just this flexibility that people need to quickly, realize this is not going to work, and I can quickly change. And that's another Ethiopian culture, I think, to kind of hang on to ideas and not wanting to be flexible. So we've seen a lot of things, and one of these days we're going to write all this down somehow, because we're learning a lot. But anyway, so these are the challenges that I see.
Excellent. So, Lama.
Oh, sorry, can I just say one thing? On the product, we have a thing that, build a product that people want, not what people need. Because we often think, I'm going to be the social entrepreneur. People need water, access to water, or they need this or they need that, and we want that impact. And so people come with these ideas of what they think people need, but that doesn't matter. What you have to build a business around is what people want. And so that kind of shifts the whole thing to understanding who you're building this product for, who's this business for. So that's another thing that we also try to change the mindset around.
So, Marco, thank you, Dr. Eleni. Marco, as you answer this question, just to piggyback another point to it, because I think we're hearing a lot about teamwork from different people here, and I think it's at the developed stage. But from ICITES's perspective, you have a very interesting ecosystem where there's just a lot of people coming in, a lot of ideas being thrown around. So if you can piggyback what some of those advantages that you observed are of that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Actually, most of these mindset-related things, like what Dr. Eleni and Amadou actually mentioned, is like completely right, and I don't want to repeat that. But if you flip the coin a little bit, maybe I can even ask, like, how many of you, for instance, run your own tech startups here? Can I see any hand? See 1, 2, 3, 4 people, or like some of you probably work also like in the kind of companies as employee. And some of the challenges, like we know, right? It's been like discussed. I remember last year, like in this kind of setup, the same kind of panel, probably with the same title of the panel, discuss about this kind of challenges. which is related, for instance, like with policy and making it like same level. If he doesn't get licensed for exactly the same project, and if I get it, so there is something wrong, right? It's discouraging startups. Or if I can't close a business the time when I want it, and then it's like I cannot actually innovate to create a new product because I will be discouraged that will be a problem in the long term. So there is like this level, like justice in terms of like commercial justice is actually very important in this regard. I think like the Ministry of Industry is working on that. I think they are drafting, you're also involving, and yeah, entrepreneurship, national entrepreneurship policy. I think that kind of thing is like extremely important. From our work in ISAT, especially concerning the teamwork, we see a lot of challenges. Like some of the challenges are very mindset related challenges, right? So some people want to do everything. They want to do back end, you know, front end, they want to do hardware, they want to do robot, they want to do like everything together as one or two people. That's impossible. So you need to focus that. You cannot be MyGovern, basically. On the other side, there is a huge lack of access to a certain kind of finance, the middle finance, which is related like somehow between $20,000 to $100,000. So this is still a problem. I mean, we've been talking about this like for many years. It's really still a problem. So I think it's like Amado said, like Dr. Eleni is working on that, and I know some of the companies here and venture capitals, they work on that. Renew Strategy, for instance, they are trying to work on that issue. This is actually extremely important to work on. And the other challenges I see is like the media as well. I know we have the media is actually lack of like a certain kind of authorities and editorial authority. But when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially ICT entrepreneurship, there is a huge lack of information in that regard. So if you see in Silicon Valley, like one of the things, we know more about American startups than Ethiopian startups because the media doesn't really talk about this new product and services that the public can use. So like Amadu said, maybe like to download one app requires more than $1 in Ethiopia, you know, because it's obviously it's not easy to promote your product. So these are actually kind of challenges that we're facing and we're working on. And I said, okay, how do you really work with a certain kind of team to really the maximum business development service you can provide so that they can actually excel.
Now, Sarah, from your perspective, I think the one thing you can add is maybe some of the challenges that women have in the ICT sector, because they're acutely underrepresented, and I think you work exclusively with women that are in that pathway. So I think it'd be interesting if you added that layer to your answer.
Okay, thank you. At Ubuntu Valley, the company that actually hosts Technovation, we focus on many things, but specifically on Technovation. As you said, girls and women are definitely underrepresented in such sectors, in the ICT sector and also in the entrepreneurship areas. So what we actually are trying to do is actually trying to change the narratives from girls that are disempowered, girls that are always vulnerable, girls that always need some sort of assistance, to girls with agency, powerful girls, girls who can create, girls who can do, girls who can think, and also who can strategize. So that's the kind of mindset we're really trying to create, and we're actually also seeing a number of positive experiences from that. So some of the challenges around that is, as Dr. Eleni and many of you has already said, the attitude is very, 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 very difficult. So even when we get the girls, they're from 10 to 18 years old. The first thing they'll think, our program, it's just for 4 months. In that 4 months, they don't need to have, prior ICT skills, prior coding skills, prior entrepreneurship skills. And then, when you go out and tell their schools, their parents, themselves that they can, if they're interested, they can actually learn how to code. They can actually do a business plan, take their business plan to a market, and they can actually create something that's valuable, not just to themselves, but also, to the community that they live in. So really believing that that can be done through, a 10 or to 18 years old girl, the challenge starts there. So most of the girls that we actually meet, first when we meet them, they don't even have email accounts. Most of them, some have. But, telling those girls that actually you can actually design, a mobile application that's marketable, that can actually solve a lot of issues that you think are important. So, but then going through, all the programs and everything, and then at the end of the 4 months, when they see that they have actually created an application that people can actually download, they can also, take it to the market, then I think that transformation, you can really see it. I mean, I've been engaged in, in a number of youth and girls empowerment, entrepreneurship related issues, and then, the level of transformation that you witness on a, on a girl's eyes, it's really great. So one of the things, as I said, is attitudinal. The other thing is infrastructural issues. We talk about the connectivity issues. It's at times, a little bit disappointing to see that, things that can be done very easily, and that can actually change, lives of girls and also boys, that can be done very easily, are not really attended to. So if you go, for example, to government schools, you find it difficult for for students there to actually go around and try to work around their ICT skills, nurture their entrepreneurship skills and all those. So those kind of infrastructural related, either connectivity or, ICT gadgets and all those has also been a challenge for us. The other thing is we work with mentors, so, very dedicated mentors. But then, taking this consistent mentorship and then coaching to another level, so that, they, the kind of the thinking of, this voluntarism, so that people, they actually come and then give for the girls, their time, their energy and everything. We see a number of promising people who actually do that, but we also see a little bit of challenge around that, to give time, to give energy, to give, your skills on voluntary basis to others. That's also a challenge that we've witnessed. And lack of, I would say, incubation centers. Girls with amazing ideas, amazing applications, amazing business plans, for them to actually get access to a seed money, to some kind of, incubation related things. That are also actually some of the things that we miss, and we really believe could be addressed for a multiplier effect. And one thing that I want to also focus is believing in that, starting early. Okay, I'm going to finish. We engage girls that are as 10 years old, 12 years old. So starting early to gate to those people, to help them engage in those areas, in entrepreneurship, ICT, and all those, we actually have witnessed that it will pay off later.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sarah. So let's take some questions from the audience, please. And somebody with a mic. And please limit to questions. I think everybody's looking forward to going to lunch, and try to be succinct as possible, please. So does somebody have a microphone out there? Okay, maybe we can share this one.
Sure, this is good. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the panel. My name is Bobby. I'm a social entrepreneur supporting a number of incubators. My question for each of you is, can you tell me your experience about providing the hard, difficult advice to the founders about either their market or the direction that they're in? Because I presume that you're sitting on their board, or you're providing them, you need to provide them guidance. Maybe they're in the wrong market. Maybe they need a better business plan. So if you can share a little bit of your experience on that. And then the second question has to do with for incubators, there are often a number of companies that become successful and others that don't. It was mentioned earlier. So what's your experience, your ratio, like 1 out of 10, 1 out of 11 that goes through your program actually, return, have an ROI versus the ones that are just, they do other things. So those two would be of interest to me.
Hi, my name's Peter. I'm an entrepreneur and an advisor. If you look at how entrepreneurship has developed in other countries, notably India, it has really benefited from diaspora. People who were exposed to entrepreneurship in another environment and who came back and started companies and exposed. What role does that play in Ethiopia? What's the story? How are we kind of including diaspora in kind of entrepreneurship?
Let's get one more question and then we'll go to the panelists.
Hi. My name is Hoata. I always say I'm not in IT, but I work in IT because I'm coming from it from a policy perspective. So Marcos mentioned we're working on the National Entrepreneurship Strategy right now, and it's circulating. So I would like all of you, if you could try to get your hands on that and make comments on that. That was the first thing that I wanted to talk about. On the gender thing, so I said that I'm a policy person. Whenever we sit in a public-private forum with the ministry every quarter, there are maybe 3 or 4 women in the room, in the entire room. So because of this, we have Wezero Mekdas, who's the Ethio Telecom CIO, started a Women in Tech initiative where we've trained, and we work with Net Technovation as well, we've trained 40 girls the first year, 240 girls in 5 different cities, and 100 girls in public schools that will graduate in a few months. So that's the comment that I want to make. But the question I wanted to ask was specifically to Eleni. So when we did the National Entrepreneurship Strategy Workshop, there was a lot of comment that the interventions were particularly for the urban sector. So the example I gave to one of the students that was there was, you're in Addis and you have access to ICE and to Blue Moon. So if you had a twin, okay, so your twin could go to Blue Moon, get accepted, get the whole 4-month training, have access to the people that you have access to the Lions, have access to the seed investors. What do we do for your twin sister that lives in a rural city? And that stumped the panel. So everything that they came up with was something that was very either, even the cities that women in tech work in are Bahardar, Jamma, and Harar, so they're also big cities. So what is your solution to her twin sister?
Okay, so let me just summarize the questions, and I think we'll start with Dr. Eleni because it was a direct question to her. So the first question was the interventions that are happening and the emphasis on urban versus rural. The second is what is the success rate for your different programs? How many people are coming in and out of them? The next is what kind of different advice do you give to entrepreneurs when they have the challenges and when there's a tough conversation needs to happen? Did I capture all the questions, I think? Good.
I'll try to go through them very quickly. The pivoting I already mentioned happens a lot, and sometimes it's when somebody thinks they're developing a product, but it actually makes more sense that they should think about it as a service because they're going to be able to roll it out faster. There have been several things like that. Other times, a team comes in and wants to do, and so an example is somebody that wanted to do agricultural machinery for farmers, and we thought that was a great idea, but if they actually did it as a Hello Tractor type of Uber services of the machinery, then they could probably reach a lot more farmers. So then they kind of became a tech service rather than a manufacturer of, they still manufacture something, but they're not only doing the manufacturing, they're actually doing less manufacturing and more service. So we do those kind of pivots fairly regularly. Another company said they wanted to be livestock advisory, but also an information service, and also a virtual livestock market. And we said, well, we got to pick. And so, so sometimes it's narrowing it down, sometimes it's kind of pivoting the whole way that the business will roll out the model. So I could give you many examples, but excuse me, let me just go back to my notes. So that's one. And then on the success ratio, very good question. We have a model that 70% of our cohort, the batch, will make it through the incubator, because the incubator itself is pretty tough, and will make it to achieving the milestones for the seed fund. Then we have a second projection that 70% of those who will make it to the end of the incubator will get seed funding. And then we have another prediction, which I won't share now because we're still seeing that unfold. How many of them will reach the hockey stick inflection in 3 years where they actually start to scale up? And so really at the end of it, we're talking about 10 to 20% of the starting cohort that really goes far. So in a sense, we're like the 3F fund. So there's the family and the friends, and then there's Blue Moon, which is the food, third F. But we think that that's how you get somewhere. Is you got to be willing to take the risk that out of the 100, really we're left with 20% in 5 years that we're going to see going places, and that's okay. And that's kind of how we've modeled our approach. On the female, we started with 16% of our co-founders female. We're now at 38%. We've learned a lot in these 18 months. A lot of our female co-founders are techies, doing really interesting things, fresh milk delivery on an app. Also, and I could go on, we have a mobile gaming woman CEO. But what we've learned is that it's the language and the way we approach the recruitment that helps really make it a safe space, because we worked with a woman who has worked with incubators around the world, here at CIMIT, at the Ilri campus, and Dr. Christy Druska, and she said, first of all, there's only 15% of Silicon Valley startups that have female co-founders, not even CEOs, any co-founder. UK, it's about, I think, 5%, so even less. So it really has to, so 38% is sort of astounding at this point. And to go from the 16%, we're very proud of that. And we've done a lot of things, started a female co-founders club within our incubator, changed the images on our posters. Our first flyer, roll-up banner, said, do you have a plan for world domination? Come talk to us about it. And even my 16-year-old son said, Mom, don't you think that's a little aggressive? I thought, no, this is what we need to do. We need people that are really driven. And now we have, do you know your Ethiopia's future? And with a woman, a girl image. So there are things we've adjusted, and we think that they're working, but there's more to do. And then I wanted to say one other thing, which I think, the rural reach, which is a very important question. So we recruit around the country, but we can't get to the last mile. And I think we have to be honest about that. So we're trying to do agribusiness, things that are farmer-facing. That's where the big market is. That's where scale is. But how do you get entrepreneurs from within rural itself? There was a gentleman here from Save the Children who spoke at the last session. So Save the Children is one of our partners. They have 35,000 youth entrepreneurs that they're targeting. But they're pretty much doing very traditional micro-enterprise types of entrepreneurship. So when we say, well, we want people that have scalable, tech-driven ideas, and are there people in your program that are frustrated because you're not able to give them high-touch advisory, high-risk capital for the kinds of things that they want? So my favorite example is, Save the Children, Oxfam, all these programs are training tens of thousands of youth entrepreneurs on how to be, buy a cow, milk the cow, and sell the milk. And you develop a business plan, you get a microfinance credit, etc. But what if somebody shows up and says, I don't want to buy a cow, I have a gadget which will make the milking twice as fast. I have an app that will get the milk sold across the country. I have a device that will store the milk and double the shelf life. And then the NGO says, hey, I don't know what to do with you because, I can't roll out 10,000 training and spend, 100 days with you working on this idea. I can't take you to microfinance because nobody's going to invest in this idea. They want you to buy a cow. So those people go away and become very frustrated. So they call them blue moons in the NGO. They say, hey, that's a blue moon. apply, and they actually help them fill out our application. So we have a target of getting 30% of our applications from outside of an urban area. We're only at 7 or 8% right now. So, and it's still via universities. So people who come from rural, went to university, senior thesis, they have an interesting project, they want to go back to their community and roll that out. And so they still come to Blue Moon, but it's not enough. But I'm not sure we're going to get scalable, innovative ideas from where we're trying to catch them from the NGO projects. And once they're at the university, they're probably maybe defined as urban. But we do have 20% of our entrepreneurs, even if they're urban, outside of Addis, so that we're already happy about. Now, to get to the last mile is the next challenge, and I don't know how far we can go, to be honest, but we're trying. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm trying to answer Bobby's question. Yeah, so the hardest thing for these young people to understand is what does it mean to be an entrepreneur? And when you explain it to them, some of them in tears, right? Because it's not entrepreneur, for me, entrepreneur is different than being a business person, right? Entrepreneur would have transformative product, transformative change within the country, rather than owning, for example, a cafe. I'm not downsizing that, I'm just saying you have to be a little crazier, right, to be an entrepreneur. So when we have these young people come in, yeah, we're trying to be an entrepreneur, there's something that Elon Musk, the creator of Tesla, always say. It's like chewing on glass and staring at the abyss. One side, there's certain things you don't want to do as an entrepreneur, but at the same time, you're trying to save your company from dying, right? So when you tell them what it means to be an entrepreneur, they either break or they actually make it. So, for example, David was a technical guy, great coder, went to Ict Labs, built some machine learning tool, thought he was the greatest guy ever in Ethiopia. If you see him today, he humbled down because he realized he needs to take care of business. He needs to take care of licenses. He needs to go do marketing, which he hates, right? Those are chewing on glass, talking to people. When you see him, you get, if you meet him, you say. So those are the hardest talks we have, man. You have to think that this is something amazing. And I always give my example. I had to leave the United States of America, move to Ethiopia 2 years ago, off with just a dream, right? You have to be crazy like that, to make it happen. So that's the first thing. On the exit side, we have a long way to go. So the startup ecosystem, except I said this, only started in Ethiopia. Even in Kenya, some companies still struggling to exit. So it will take some sort of leapfrogging for us to figure out how do we exit Ethiopian companies, right? Who's going to come and buy them out, right? There's companies here who should have been bought out a long time ago. But because of the policies, the regulation, internet, right? Thinking about Deliver Addis, a good friend of mine, right? Felt like should have been bought or somebody should have given more cash. But it's not happening. So there's a lot of stuff that we need to prove. We need to grow the community more before we can start even thinking about exit. I don't think it will happen for another 5 years. There's a few companies out there that do not belong to incubation. They have a potential. For example, Zayride is one of the potential that do not belong to an incubation but have an option to exit. So pray for us, man, for the next 5 years.
One phrase about people who decide to coach or mentor others who are on their way, just one phrase: I'm here to serve you, not to make you happy or to make you like me. I'm not here for that. I'm here to serve you. And so I will be telling you things to serve you and possibly your customer or your investor down the line.
Marcos?
Great questions. Just again, like starting from you, I know that you will raise your hands when I ask that if you're already an entrepreneur. So for incubators, especially in Africa, like if joining incubator will increase 20% of chance of likely to be successful. That's a VC for Africa study, including ISAT, they're studying that, so you can actually check that online. But what we see for us also success rate in terms of we measure at the bottom line, at the end is the startups can make it. The whole point of incubator is the startups can make it and become a bigger company, right? So we look into the income generating company, and also like they are still existing in terms of like in the market. So we are on 52% success rate so far. So like more than half of our startups actually like are generating income, and they are still in business, which is very good, I think, especially compared to the 20% failure system. And some of the entrepreneurs actually also here. I see Yosias at the very back. They are like running businesses, and we also like really help a lot of startups to get international exposure. Like we send around 16 startups for international exposure. Christian went. We organized that event in Ethiopia. We're gonna have it this year as well with Slash, so people can apply and go and hopefully like win like Christian. So there is a lot of like success stories despite like a lot of challenges, of course. When it comes to like even acquisition, I was just telling Lenny next to me that like there's one company that we're working was like called Zero Roads. They are actually like now acquired by Israeli company. They are negotiating in that, so that will probably be one of the very few companies acquired from Ethiopia. So we're looking forward to that. It's a security company, so it's interesting. Cool. Yeah, so in terms of diaspora, Peter, that's actually a very good question. Thank you very much for asking. Deliver artist, Faleg is a diaspora guy, or how to take like Iskander and Amanil, they are, like diasporas coming from Germany. So there is a lot of diaspora engagement. But one of the main challenges, to be honest, in diaspora is a political problem. So it's like, so far there is no real incentives for diaspora people to engage in Ethiopia, but I think that seems to be solved now, so you can imagine. So many people actually like come back now to Ethiopia, and then we see a lot of business engagement in that regard. So hopefully, Jelani, and like you're gonna open your company here soon, and many of you actually like might come back and open your company. So I think that will solve. And for us, as I said, just like we have like a lot of exciting things are coming up, of course. We're working on like blockchain technology, which I know some of you already engaged in that, and we're also opening ICE Awasa in soon, hopefully this year. So we're going to have like a second hub opening in Ethiopia. So that's actually like kind of engaging a little bit of urban, semi-urban places as well. So yeah.
Sarah, if you can please.
Let me start from the focusing on the urban-rural nexus. So for us, it has really been a challenge, of course. And then this year, we've actually started to go a little bit further out of Addis. So, and we're actually working closely with the Ministry of Science and Technology to actually take this model to other parts of the country. So I believe that's going to be a direction for us. As the other panelists has also said, it's not going to be an easy road, we believe, but then we're actually taking the challenge. And in terms of success rate, for now, I would actually say qualitatively, I'd really like to take a qualitative measure, seeing our successes. I mean, success for me is actually, seeing in each and every girl that's around me, to see the difference and the journey that she has come in just 4 months, and how she defines herself, how she is ready to accept a challenge, how she actually wants to go forward, and then now believing in herself that she's not limited, she can do something. So I believe that, that has been very successful. And then quantitatively, when we started, how we started is actually to do all this skills training to help them, launch their applications, to do their business plan and everything. And then the next step was to link them with potential supporters and potential, Fs, mostly the fools. We're targeting the fools, of course. So to actually help them launch their businesses. But we're also looking forward to, to navigate the incubation concept as well, and then to help most of the promising teams and the promising applications and business plan for them to have an avenue and a platform to take their challenge to the next level. And I mean, we're also very much, I'd like also to take this opportunity for you to visit our booth. We have a booth there, so you can catch up with, with the girls that have actually were able to create something for themselves, and then probably, who knows, you may be prospectful. Yeah, thank you.
So why don't we take another round of questions very quickly, and then we can do a wrap up. So, any questions? We have at least one.
Can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My name is Elsabet Tedros, and I had two quick questions. One is, we always talk about how we can have knowledge sharing outside of Africa, but I think there are several incubators, several financial institutions are doing quite well when it comes to incubation, linkages of entrepreneurs to financial institutions. So how are your organizations working with successful platforms in Africa? Tony Alemelo foundation has about $100 million that is for entrepreneurs that they're working on with mentors. And if you look at South Africa, for instance, Barclays works with accelerators and has a full service in looking at the ecosystem, not only in entrepreneurship, but also linkages to financial services, legal, one being very important, intellectual property that we don't address. So when we talk about these things, not only finances, legal aspects are also important. So how are you working with other African countries? Because in the end, we have to tackle this on a regional and continental basis. Thank you.
If I can just get a clarification of that question, because I'm not sure what it was when it comes around. So if I understand correctly, you're saying there is an aggregation of money in foundations and DFIs and organizations like that, and how is it kind of touching the Ethiopia ecosystem in terms of investment and support for organizations like this?
I guess I'll simplify it. Okay, so my question is, how do you work with countries that have actually done very well? How do you cross-pollinate knowledge and financing and all the different experiences? Because we always look very domestically, and in the end we have to look regionally, right? So how do we look inwards within the continent, and countries that have done exceptionally well have a competitive advantage when it comes to this? Rwanda, Kenya, you see what I mean? More of a Pan-Africanist thought, yeah?
Exactly, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Hello everyone, my name is Yod Bishal. I'm from the Girls Can Code and Beyond project. I'm the project manager and also the main trainers. This year we trained more than 100 girls and boys in 10 public high schools to be more interested in science and technology. So my question for you guys is, how are you pushing the government to change the policy for startups? I had a startup with my friends, and most of the policies are not hostile for us, and also how to partner with telecom companies is kind of harsh. So how are you guys working on it? Thank you.
እኔ በአማርኛ ነው የማወራው። ጸዳለ ማርያም አቦዬ እባላለሁ። የብዙ ፈጠራ ባለቤት ነኝ። 5 ዶክተሮች፣ 27 ኢንጂነሮች፣ አቶ ሳሙኤል ሸሻይን ኮንስትራክሽን ጨምሮ 2 ፕሮፌሰሮች ያቆኛል። ከትላንትና ወዳ ተወለድኩ። ግን ዶክተር እሌኒ ለማግኘት 7 ቀን ፈጀብኝ። ዛሬ አዲስ አበባ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ሄጄ የሚመረቁ ደግሞ ተማሪዎች እኔ ድርጅት መጥተው ፈጠራ እንዲማሩ ሳልማር ማለት ነው ዲግሪ ሳይኖረኝ ማስተር ሳይኖረኝ ዶክተር አቡሽ አያሌ፣ ዶክተር ወሩታ፣ ዶክተር አረጋ ሸልመውኛል። ስለዚህ እኔ ስለዚች አገር ምን ማድረግ አለብኝ ብዬ ዩኒቨርሲቲ ሲሄድ ፈጠራዎቼን ይዤ ሽልማቴን ይዤ ስመጣ ያው በጣም ደስ ብሎኛል። ቅድም ግን ዶክተር እሌኒ ሳይሉ እሌኒ ብቻ ሲሉ ዶክተር መሆናቸው ከሳቸው ጋር ጠየቅኩኝ። ስለዚህ እኔ ከእናንተ የምፈልገው ጥያቄ የምጠይቃችሁ ኢንፎርሜሽን ትራንስፎርሜሽን የምትወልድ እናት ነች። ታች ሄዳችሁ ይህን መስሪያ ቤት ምን ያህል እናቶች ያያል? አሁን ከትናንትና ወደ እኔ እንጨት ባለሙያ ነኝ። እንጨቱን መሸከም እንዳልችል በሰለጠነ አሰራር እንዲህ ስሰራ የሰፈሩ ሰው ሁሉ ማታ ሲስቅ አበደች ወይ ብሎ ሲስቅ አንድ ዶክተር አይቶ አንቺም ዶክተር ነሽ ብሎ ጽፏል። ስለዚህ አሁን ይሄ መስሪያ ቤት እኔ ብዙ ምሸጥለት ፈጠራ አለ። ግን አዲስ አበባ ዩኒቨርሲቲ የተመረቀ ተማሪ በሙሉ እኔ ጋር መጥቶ ትሬኒንግ እንዲወስድ 5 ቦታ ነው ያለኝ። 1 አየር ጤና ኢንዱስትሪ መንደር፣ 2 አዶት ኮምፕሌክስ ባለሀብቱ ቦታ ሰጥተውኛል፣ አልፈሪድ ይባላሉ። 3 ደግሞ ካራቆሬ ራሴ ከፍቻለሁ። 4 ወለታ ላይ ትስስር አለኝ። 5 ሰገድ ህንፃ ላይ 6 አለኝ። 7 ደግሞ እዚሁ አቶ ሰይድ አህመድ አምባሳደር በዩኤንዲፒ አንደኛ ወጥቼ አንድ ቀን መጥቶ የሚያየኝ የለም። ለዶክተር እሌኒ አጨብጭቡላቸው እሳቸውን ስላገኘው። ግን ቅድም እሌኒ በማለታቸው ቅር ብሎኛል። ስለዚህ ዶክተር እሌኒ ታች ሄደው ምን ያህል እህቶትን ያያሉ? በዚህ አጋጣሚ እኔ ዋና ስራዬ ኢንተርፕረነር ነኝ፣ በያጅ ነኝ፣ ባለሙያ ነኝ፣ ቻምበር ንግድ ምክር ቤት ሜምበር ነኝ። ማንኛውም ነገር በዛ ያገኛለሁ። ሳልጠራ ራሴ ፈልጊያችሁ ነው የመጣሁት። ይሄ ነው ኢንተርፕረነርሺፕ ማለት። ማንም ሳይፈልገኝ ራሴ ላሳውቅ ነው የመጣሁት። አመሰግናቸዋለሁ። ሁላችሁም እንድታዩኝ ፈጠራዎቼንም ስራዎቼ እንድታዩኝ በዚህ አድራሻ ይሄ ለቤቱ ሸልሜዋለሁ።
Can I add one thing to? Quick comment to this. እሺ ሰላም የኔ እናት በጣም እናመሰግናለን። እኛ እንፈልግሻለን። እሺ ፈልገሽ በመምጣትሽ በጣም ደስ ብሎናል። እሺ እኔ ሌኒ ስላት ሌኒና እኔ ከ35 በላይ ዓመት በላይ ስለምንተዋወቅ ነው ገና ዶክተር ሳትሆን ስለማውቃት so that was bravo እና ንቀት እንዳልሆነ እንድታቂልኝ ብዬ ነው። እሺ okay and for okay, and then my one other thing about the diaspora question, we did a study at Ict, the Private Sector Association, and most of the IT companies, the startups, are actually started by diaspora. And there's a once-a-year diaspora dialogue that we do with the ministry. And 3 years ago, Shem, who was on the diaspora dialogue conversation, it's a teleconference that we do, came to Ethiopia and has now invested and is partners with Eleni and Blue Moon, has invested in Ride, the yellow and green taxis that you see. So we actually do have a lot of diaspora engagement, especially in, I think probably the most diaspora engagement that we have in Ethiopia is actually in the IT and technology sector. Thank you.
Why don't we just close that and summarize the questions? Is this working? Okay, let me summarize the questions and maybe add 1 or 2, and we'll close out from here and go to lunch. The first question is, how do we work regionally, engage regionally, and the interesting things that are going on across the region. Number 2 is, what kind of advocacy is there on government for the regulatory side to push for startups? And I think, let me add a little bit there, because it's something that Amadou had said earlier in the financing space. So I think one of the things I've heard from many of the incubators, especially in the ICT space, that's very challenging for investment is, number one, the minimum investment for FDI is $150,000 in Ethiopia to come in. That's very, very high for some of these. Because the ICT companies that have done really well regionally and globally are ones that are able to leverage reliable mobile technologies, strong e-commerce systems. I think we'll see that on Wednesday, which that infrastructure is grown fast, but it's just not there where it can be leveraged for scalable investments. So that's the second question on the lobbying side. I added a little bit to it if you can comment. And I think Dr. Eleni will address our last point. But let me start with Jim this time to answer the questions, please. And as you do this, if you could do a quick wrap up so we can all kind of finish out. In the wrap up, just talk about what's next. You know, I think we've talked about a bunch of things today on this space. Where do you see, from your knowledge of Ethiopia, the things that need to happen in the next stages for the entrepreneurship environment ecosystem, if you will, to progress more rapidly?
Personally, I want to establish this university in conjunction with my partner here. That's a goal, and we're 70–80% on the way. And secondly, to bring some competition in with entrepreneurial boot camps. And what I've learned, having 700 Ethiopian students, just about myself, I teach one of the classes on what kind of intelligence you need besides technical intelligence. And what I learned about Ethiopians is they're the quietest, smartest, not speaking up people in my class. So what I tell them is, you got to speak up. They answer like this, very quietly, and not confident in themselves, and they should be. Back to this attitude. And when they get to their interview, they have to be confident and humble. They have the humble part, but confidence and humility at the same time is a great thing. And then, I don't know if you've noticed, I'm modeling the flag of Ethiopia. I have green, I have red, and I have gold. And I'm modeling it, you can buy it, okay? Anyway.
All right, so I'll address the Pan-African question. So when we set out Gabea, we made it Pan-African at first because we realized, there's something fundamentally I believe. I believe that if we want to catch up to the world, the greatest tool that young Africans have is technology because there's low barrier to entry. If you wanted to open a manufacturing firm, you have to have a lot of cash, you have to have a lot of resources you need. But if you want to build a product, all you need is a brain and a laptop. What we lack in is not necessarily the brain, is how do we shape the brains? And how do we shape the spirit, which is the mindset, right? You mentioned Ethiopian students are very shy at first. The same thing at Gabea. The first day you ask them questions, they just look at you. It's not that it's a culture thing also, it's observant, taking the time to gauge you and see what you're about, And then after that, they go wild, right? So the mindset in the brain will break through. It's not to downside the other sectors, agriculture and stuff like that. It's just because the youth is already plugged in. They're already online. They're already touching the products. The thing is, how do we add value? Are we just going to continue consuming these products? Right? People associate Facebook as the internet. What's beyond? I think two things that would actually speed up this thing for me is, one, the government and some of the entrepreneurs needs to figure out a way to solve, for example, the internet problem in Ethiopia. Now, forget going out, at least in. So, for example, Paul Kagame of Rwanda decided to create one network whereby any businesses or any people in the country can actually communicate using a local network. The only time they will need to get out is if they want to communicate with an international company. For example, if you're a company, you have a Gmail account, I have a Gmail account, we're both here. I have to send my email to Gmail, it goes out to the cloud and come back to you. So if the internet gets cut off, guess what? We both out of business, right? So we should be able to figure out how to create networks, and there's technologies for that can fuel actually the entire country. You have Djibouti next door, you have the fiber optic you can broaden. So there's so many things. They need to think outside the box, not necessarily copy. The second thing that we need to do is collaborations among the hubs. We had a secret meeting about a month ago. Is figured out because we're all in this together. Like the gentleman talked about, how do you measure success and exit? Well, if you don't support each other, for example, we know we're a talent company. We're not a startup company. We don't breed startup, we breed entrepreneurs. Okay? When I'm done with an entrepreneur, I can pass it on to these guys. But these guys also, when they have the entrepreneurs that need products, they can come to us to get the talent. We build the best talent in Ethiopia, period. You won't find them anywhere else in Ethiopia, right? So that's the idea. And then once we're solid in Ethiopia, there's something I learned from Dangote. He mentioned you have to be able to, Dangote is the richest man in Africa for those. He's in Ethiopia, owns a cement factory. He said you have to focus first, right? You can't go Pan-African right away. If I can make it in Ethiopia, which is the hardest country to do business with, and as a startup, then Kenya would be a walk in the park. Rwanda would be a walk in the park. So those are my 2 cents in how we move forward.
Dr. Eleni?
Okay, thank you. This has been really interesting and really fun to hear from the other incubators. So I think to Elizabeth's question about exposure to the region and Pan-Africa, I would actually start by saying, can we do more of this so that we ourselves are first of all linking a lot more together? So I think that goes to Amadu's point about, even domestically starting that conversation. We've been trying to do that for a while with a series called Ecosystem 101, which we do every Thursday, and trying to do a lot of this interaction, how we build a startup ecosystem together. I think right now we're going to be moving towards that more and more. I also think that, or I should mention that we have another initiative called Startup Ethiopia, which is something we're working on with UNDP to have an annual conference, a convening of startups really from across the country, and then also involving other Africans. So I think we're going to also get there. But then the other part is picking up on what my friend Marcos said about global exposure, because I think that's really important. So last November, and we're going to do it again this November, and involve our friends in the peer community more, as we did also last year, which is to have a boot camp with Draper University from the Bay Area in Silicon Valley. So they came out here and they ran a boot camp for 3 days with about 50 entrepreneurs or startups. And one thing they said at the end of it, they handed out 8 scholarships, and we actually have 2 of our companies in Draper's summer session right now. And one of the things that they said is, you guys are just like the startups, the founders we have in the Bay Area. The only difference is your access to resources, the internet at your fingertips, and VCs and all that. But really your drive, your passion, your ideas, you're on top of it. And so those kind of linkages, I think we're going to do a lot more. And so we're actually going into a collaboration with Draper to do a lot more of that kind of link up and on-site presence here. So stay tuned, I guess, is the big message on that. Policy. We could have a whole session just on that, and I think we need to. So I cannot possibly answer any of your questions, but I have tons of ideas about that. But what I think we do need to say is, for me, the fundamental issue is that we need to distinguish between an entrepreneur starting a micro enterprise, a sambusa shop on the corner, and somebody like Christian and many others trying to be the next Uber logistics platform for farmers in Ethiopia and maybe in Africa. There's just a very big difference in the risk profile, in the time to get to market, in the product development strategy, so many things that if we treat these 2 entities the same way when it comes to tax, when it comes to access to services, then we're simply going to kill anything that's innovative and high risk. And that's, I think, really the challenge that as a country we have to solve. And the last bit in that same vein comes to financing. I mentioned that we're trying to start a seed fund. We went long and hard. We had many conversations with foreign investors saying, wow, we love this, the European Investment Bank, we love what you're doing. We want to put a 20 million fund with you. Yeah, except that means we have to invest 200,000, maybe 150 if it's a tech company, and that's going to be our minimum threshold. So we don't want to start a foreign dollar-denominated fund, because then we're going to cut out exactly the part of the chain that we're interested in, and then we're in the same space with Novastar and Renew and wherever, which is 500,000 and above. Where we want to be is in the space below 100,000, maybe even below 70,000. So to do that, we have to have a domestic BR fund. So that's what the Blue Moon Seed Fund is going to be. And we went and looked at what Rwanda has done and what Singapore and Chile have done, which is to have government anchoring that kind of a seed fund and being a first loss partner of that fund. Meaning that because the risk is so high, why doesn't government not only participate and be an anchor investor in a domestic BR fund or domestic currency fund, but also signal to the other private investors, which would be other domestic private investors, that could be banks, could be insurance companies, could be the pension fund, but let the government say, as they have done in other countries, we will take the first loss because of that profile, that ratio of the 10% success rate, which we know is what a VC calculation is. So let's incentivize other privates to come in on a domestic fund so that we can actually create this financing window for privates, for startups. So I think that's my responses to the questions broadly read. Before I say one thing to my friend, I want to just say that in wrapping up, I wanted to mention one thing which I didn't get to before, which is Blue Lab. So one of the other things that we saw when we were doing the last 18 months of incubation is that there are great entrepreneurs with great ideas, but to scale, to go faster and broader, they need technology. They need to really move digitally. But not all great entrepreneurs are geeks. They don't all come with the techie skills, but they have great ideas. And then the converse, we also saw that there are great robotics, AI coders, people doing machine learning, but they don't really have entrepreneurship skills or interest. So not all techies are entrepreneurs, and not all entrepreneurs are techies. So how do we bring the two together is the idea of Blue Lab, which is basically, and if you go to our booth, you see 3 kids who came from Cambodia, who taught themselves how to do robotics and AI and all sorts of things on YouTube, not knowing how to speak English and not having access to free Wi-Fi, literally fixing machinery in their village, saving money, going to an internet cafe, and on YouTube learning how to build drones and all these other things. And we said, these are exactly what we're talking about as the bread and butter or the ethos of the lab, is that these kinds of kids who are brilliant, and who could, any one of them, maybe go to MIT one day and be in Jalani's program, should be matched up with people who have great business ideas and who really need to get onto mobile commerce, use sensors, use robotics, use drones, and really see those opportunities and build on that. So that's what you'll have seen about Blue Lab, so please visit our booth to find out more. Finally, I want to say one word. Wezoro Mandibel? Sadala Mariam. እሺ በአማርኛ ነው ለርሶ በመልሰው በጣም አመሰግናለሁ ያሉትና የሰጡን ክብር በጣም ትልቅ ነው። ስለዚህ በቅድሚያ ላመሰግን ወዳለሁ። ሁለተኛ የእርሶ ፈጠራ ስራ እንደ እናትም እንደ ሴትም እንደ ኢትዮጵያዊት ሁሉንም እኛም እንፈልገዋለን እና እኛም ጋር መተው ስልጠና እንዲሰጡ እንጋብዞታለን። እስከዚህ ስንጨርስ እንገናኛለን። አመሰግናለሁ።
Yeah, thank you very much. So the regional integration, I think, like everyone, Amadou says, like we're pretty much like we feel like we are part of the Pan-African network. So if you are interested, like check out AfriLabs. It's afrilabs.org. It's a Pan-African network of hubs, which ISAT is we're part of that, but also XHub from Ethiopia is part of that, and there are Kenyan and active space in Cameroon or CC Hub in Nigeria. There are so many of them are actually part of that. And the other thing is like we're engaging in Pan-African activities called I4 policy. It's actually like around 40 hubs, like John Okolo from IOHK, also like there in Rwanda. At the time, we're engaging with a lot of hubs and techies to draft policy recommendation for government. So already Nigerian government's working on that, Rwandan government working on that right now at this moment. Actually, the Senegalese government, as well as like bit of like activities in smaller demographic places like South Sudan are engaging in that. With ISAT, like it started in Ethiopia. That's actually also one of the I would say like a success story from our side expanding into other countries. So we already have like ICE Cairo and ICE Alex in Egypt, and we have ICE Pause in Germany. And there's already like an interest to open ICE hubs in Brazil and South Sudan. So there's a lot of like engagement in that as well. So there is a lot of regional Pan-African spirit, I think, in the tech space. A lot of people love this new narrative of Africa, which is, young and use mobile and they take charge. I think that's very important to set that forward. So going from the development mindset into more, like taking risk and then business mindset. So my final 3 points is just also give you like more information that what's next. One of the things is like mentorship is extremely important. So I can see like Brooke, for instance, is like been mentoring like for many years without payment for many people, and I can see like so many people actually like Asmarat here, and a lot of people actually like there. I think that's extremely important to have mentors in the ecosystem. So we have like this platform called Makari platform. It's going to be an online platform, and we want a lot of people to engage in mentorship. I think that's something that I would like to ask if you guys want to come forward and talk to me about that. The other thing is like we recently launched like a Gabi entrepreneurship education mobile app. It's Android app, so you can find it on Google Store. So it's very entry level education for entrepreneurship. You can just check it out, and then if you want to contribute for one way or another, like please also come forward, and I would like to talk to you about that. That's my final point.
Thanks. In conclusion, I think the conversation around Pan-African initiatives is very important, and we actually, as Ubuntu Valley, we aspire to be the African Silicon Valley. So that's a vision we have, when we look around that. We're also working to organize Pan-African competition for girls on mobile application, and also, also entrepreneurship and business ideas. So we'll be very happy to collaborate with anyone who's interested around that. And then on the advocacy and lobbying aspect, I think that's also a very critical issue, and I would appreciate if there was even a government policy maker among us to actually take some of the discussions forward. So getting such collaborations, having these dialogues, and then also bringing some of the ideas on the table for policymakers is also very important. So thank you.
So let us wrap it up here. Just one or two quick comments. So this is something I think Dr. Eleni and I have actually discussed before, and the pink elephant in the room, let's say, is, Jim is from the States. So I think from your experience, you've seen most successful entrepreneurs have failed many times, over and over, lost investors' money, lost families' money, and then they do very well one day. The culture in Ethiopia, and somewhat broadly in the region, is you can't fail. If you do fail, you're not going to get a second chance. You're not going to get a third chance, because that's going to be anchored around you. That's a guy that started that company. That's a woman that started that company, and it didn't succeed. So there is a little bit of a cultural tag there that we have to begin to get around to see this environment really succeed. I would like to then finally just thank all of our speakers. They were extraordinary today. And I'd like to guide all of the interested parties that on the Ministry of Communication Information Technology website, there are a series of white papers that write around these subjects, both the skills development and the entrepreneurship. And everybody here was really kind, actually, most of them who we talked to share their experiences with their companies so that we could round out what the environment is in Ethiopia in a documented way. So thank you, everybody.